Hello everyone, I'm Jacob Kaufman.
And I'm Richard Bimmer.
And welcome to episode 14 of Rolling Release, our weekly podcast about the perpetual improvement of Linux. How you doing this week, Richard?
Good.
That's good to hear.
I've been currently struggling in my computer science classes learning C, but other than that, I'm doing pretty fine.
Well, we had a ton of Linux news this week, and there's a lot for us to talk about, so I think we should definitely jump right in here, so this doesn't take way too long, but our first story is Oracle this week, closing down the last of its Sun product lines. So, Richard, do you remember when Oracle bought Sun some years back?
Yes, I did hear about it, but I wasn't actually active enough in the community at the time to really know what happened at that point. But
yeah. So over the years here on Linux, we've realized, or we've seen the repercussions of Oracle buying Sun in a lot of different places. But this article was kind of cool because it rounded it all up. But yeah, for the immediate what's happening, basically Oracle is shutting down Spark and Solaris. And Spark would be its computer architecture. Solaris would be its operating system. It's Unix-based. It's an actual Unix operating system. Unlike Linux, or GNU, which is a Unix-like operating system, Solaris is actually Unix, or I should say it was. So this past week, 2,500 Oracle employees that were formerly Sun employees have been laid off. So yeah, they just fired 2,500 people. That is not great.
Yeah, that's
sucks for all those
pretty
people.
bad sign for them. Yeah.
Yeah. So the core Solaris engineering organization lost 90% of the Solaris department basically has been fired, including, quote, essentially all management.
So it's basically the project's like gutted at that point.
Right. So like they're still probably providing support to whoever they have current support contracts with, but they're not going to be selling any new support contracts. They're definitely not going to be updating Solaris anymore, beyond what they're contractually obligated to do with their partners. So yeah, Solaris, as ZDNet puts it, Solaris is done. And part of the reason why that has happened is because of the rise of commodity Linux x86-based servers. You know, why pay for a fancy Spark processor and pay for a Solaris license when you can just get a regular old Intel or AMD processor and put Linux on it, is kind of why Solaris died down with the rise of Linux in the past 10 years.
So Solaris wasn't compatible with x86?
It might have been, you know.
It was only on Spark?
Or? I don't know if it was a compatibility thing, but Oracle definitely pushed it with Spark because Spark was its in-house thing. It was probably optimized for. I can tell you actually, Solaris was definitely compatible with x86 because I've got it in a virtual machine right here.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, just for fun for the stream, we're going to pause right here before we go into the list of everything that Oracle did wrong. Let's go ahead and I've got Solaris 11 in a virtual machine. Going to start it up on stream here. Now, the reason I've got this in a virtual machine is because we actually had someone in our comments, I think they were trolling on YouTube, but they kept saying that that Ubuntu should rebase on, first they kept saying BSD. Do you remember this guy?
Yeah.
And then eventually he made a comment that said they should rebase on Solaris. And so I installed Solaris and found out that it's nothing like Ubuntu. It's super outdated desktop-wise. It was made for the server. And you're going to see here once this starts up that is totally true. So you can see it says Oracle Solaris when it's starting up. Like I said, actual Unix operating system. So like the command line, some of the utilities that you use are the same, but anything that's the same is only because GNU uses the same commands. It's not actually the same programs running, and it's not going to be all of the GNU licensed tools going to be using.
Yeah, because Solaris is fully Unix compliant, like it follows the whole spec, right?
Yeah. And yeah, like I said,
essentially a complete Unix operating system.
Yeah, it is. So I'm just still talking here, trying to fill up the time while this is booting, and we've got the X11 waiting cursor here. Let's see. All right, so here's the login screen. My username, I think, was Jacob. Password, I think, was password. Okay, here we go. So it's logging us in to GNOME.
The stream is about 10 seconds behind.
Okay.
I was just figuring that out because I have it paused, or I have it muted, but I'm watching to try and see what you're doing.
I can't delay my talking by 10 seconds because the recording would be 10 seconds delayed then. We just logged into Solaris though, Richard, and this is a GNOME 2 desktop environment. So GNOME 2.
Wow.
Now, GNOME 3 came out
Oh gosh.
7
yeah.
years ago. 7 years ago. So this is 7 years outdated desktop environment.
This looks like when I started using Ubuntu first in like 2011.
Yes.
Once when I like dual booted it.
Yeah, so this is
It might have
GNOME
been
version
2010 actually.
2.30.2, distributors Oracle Corporation. The build date, and this I downloaded this like a couple weeks back. The build date is June 22nd, 2015 was when this version of GNOME was built. That's the time they updated GNOME last. Their super outdated version. So we can go in and see like the different, here's our terminal. So you can see like I can type ls and it lists all my stuff, but let's say if I try and use Nano, yeah, they've got GNU Nano installed. There was something that, oh yeah, it's like, let's say I try to cat proc CPU info. Now if I open up a terminal on my local Linux system, and the fan on my laptop just got a lot louder from running this virtual machine, but if I cat /proc/CPU info, it gives me a bunch of information about my processor. Have you ever done that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then if we try and do that on Solaris, cannot open proc CPU info, no such file directory. And if we actually do an ls in our /proc directory, you can see it's just a bunch of random numbers. It doesn't have like mem info, CPU info. It's just a bunch of random numbers because that's something that Linux does special, is that it actually organizes the proc folder in ways that are very human readable. Whereas since this isn't Linux, this is a Unix thing, it's just, you know, everything's still a file, but the files are just named random crap that you can't find anything in because it's all just
Yeah.
numbers. So that was...
That's interesting. I never knew that was a Linux only thing.
Yeah.
That was something that they specifically added to their version.
Yeah, so you can see they've got their sort of Solaris theme on top of GNOME, and you've got some of the same other applications on here. But yeah, basically it's just, it was never meant for desktop usage, it was meant for server usage, and Linux has been dominating the servers, so there's not a whole lot of reason for Solaris to really exist anymore. I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. But yeah, so the former Sun open source officer, Simon Phipps, like I said, former Sun open source officer, so I can imagine he probably didn't stick around at Oracle too long based on how Oracle does open source. He made this blog post where he made a list of basically all the ways Oracle screwed up since buying Sun. So Oracle bought Sun. First of all, they described Java as the crown jewels during the transaction, but the real reason, some speculate, for buying Java was trying to sue Google for $8 billion for using Java in Android, which we've talked about, how Google kind of actually did violate, or have we talked about this, or has the Linux Action Show talked about this, and I'm just remembering what they said, Richard?
We haven't talked about this while I'm here.
All
while
right.
I've been here, I know that.
Me and Mark
but
might have touched
I had
on
heard
it,
of
but,
this stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so Oracle tried to sue Google several times, and basically they failed every single time they tried to sue Google for $8 billion for using Java without paying the license fees necessary. Now, if you look at the Google like internal mailings that they have had, it's basically confirmed that Google knew they were breaking the license and by shipping Java with Android and not paying Oracle for it, or Sun at the time. But yeah, nevertheless, the courts aren't super technology aware, so they have sided with Google, and the public usually sides with Google over huge corporations such as Oracle. So yeah, that failed. They did not make any money off of the Google lawsuits. They only spent money. Let's see here. The Oracle CEO said that Java's role in middleware was the key to success. So that would be Java Embedded, but Java Embedded Edition is now headed to a foundation. So Oracle's not going to own that anymore or make money on it. Oracle criticized Sun for failing to monetize Java and proposed a freemium model. However, Oracle's freemium model for Java has not resulted in any revenue. Oracle embraced NetBeans, and that NetBeans is now donated to Apache, so Oracle doesn't own NetBeans anymore, which was part of what they acquired from Sun. Bureaucracy over MySQL. Security fixes led to a decent portion of the user community, including Nerd on the Street, and lots more important people than us, going over to MariaDB. So MariaDB did not exist. What was that?
I use that as well in mine.
Yeah.
Like in my containers for the database.
Yeah, MariaDB did not exist when Oracle bought Sun, but it does now because of Oracle putting too much bureaucracy into MySQL. So the Oracle CEO said he would rebuild Sun's hardware business, but the hardware business's boss quit a month ago, and then the team behind it was part of the layoff this week as well. Despite understanding within the company that Solaris had to be open to win the market over Linux, Oracle hyped it up and then closed it down, and the result was Solaris becoming obsolete and shutting down now. Mishandling Hudson meant that the continuous integration business followed the Jenkins fork. Now, Richard, I didn't even know that Jenkins was like something that forked off. First of all, I didn't realize it was a fork, but you know what Jenkins is, don't you? I would imagine you do.
The build,
the build service
integration
thing. And I don't even know a lot about it. I've just seen it online when I'm looking.
When you download stuff,
right? Yeah, when I'm looking for stuff to download, I've seen Jenkins servers. But yeah, the Jenkins is actually a fork of a product called Hudson that Oracle bought from Sun, and so MariaDB and Jenkins are two things that we have now because Oracle screwed up the originals. Oracle abandoned Sun's identity management projects, and another company is now profiting off of those instead. Oracle decided to cancel Sun Cloud and dismantled the ready for cloud features of Solaris, and then the market went cloud. And Solaris couldn't live up to that because they took all the features out. Oracle renamed StarOffice and announced a cloud version of StarOffice, but that never became really a big thing. And of course, sensing the impending end of life of OpenOffice, the community jumped ship to LibreOffice. So once again, when me and Richard started using Linux, every Linux distribution came with OpenOffice, and
just I remember that.
Oracle bought Sun, and now every distribution comes with LibreOffice. So, and then the author mentions only VirtualBox seems unscathed. VirtualBox is the only product that Oracle seems to have not screwed up at this point. So, I'm glad because
I forgot they were owned by him. Yeah,
I just now opened up VirtualBox and started a virtual machine. I use VirtualBox for all of my virtual machine tasks because the only real alternative that I've seen for desktop usage is VMware, and VMware is proprietary, and VirtualBox is open source. So I use VirtualBox whenever I can.
Isn't there one called QEMU?
Yeah, QEMU is for. I've used QEMU, and it's got a little bit worse graphics performance. It's more for servers. Now, you can get really good graphics performance if you put a dedicated video card just to it, but for virtualized graphics, its performance isn't as good. And that's why I say that VirtualBox and VMware are the only two options for desktop usage. Now, server usage, Linux has some of the best virtualization sets out there. It's got QEMU, it's got Zen as an option. There's stuff out there. I don't know what all's behind it, and that stuff's a lot more complicated to set up as well. Now, like GNOME Boxes builds on QEMU, and I've used GNOME Boxes before, but yeah, there are other options. They're not as easy to set up for me personally, and they're not what I normally go to as a go-to. But yes, there are other options available if you're looking to do really complicated stuff. But yeah, basically, this is once again a former Sun employee speaking. Oracle said it was going to reinvigorate the Sun brand, but instead has killed it more dead than any Sun executive managed. And then back to the ZDNet article, Oracle buying Sun was a waste of money for Oracle and a waste of once valuable Sun technologies. So that is where that's at. Those were pretty harsh articles, but really, me and Richard
see the opinion shining through in that article, but me and Richard, the facts do mostly speak for themselves.
we both, you said what I was thinking when I sent this in the Rocket chat, how I knew that each one of these things had happened, but I didn't realize just how bad it all was added up until somebody put it all in a list in this article.
Yeah.
So I
when you see it compiled like that in a bulleted list, you really realize how much they messed up with it.
Yeah. So. That was an interesting article. I wanted to talk about that, and we'll hopefully VirtualBox stays alive. But yeah, Solaris is no more. All right, next story is another big enterprise one. SUSE Linux Enterprise 12 Service Pack 3 has been released. Have you ever used, well, you probably haven't used, I've never used SUSE Linux Enterprise. Have you ever used it?
No.
It's commonly abbreviated SLES, similar to how Red Hat is abbreviated. But yeah, the new SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 12 Service Pack 3, it supports more hardware platforms and has better performance, clustering ability, and security than before. The new patch supports the latest chips from ARM, Intel, AMD, IBM Z Systems, and Power. It supports non-volatile memory, express over fabrics. So just going a little bit more in depth into everything, hardware and virtualization, which is obviously a big thing. You know, if you are doing enterprise stuff like QEMU, you can now do that with less power consumption and using more economical hardware by using it on ARM systems, which is a new thing that you can do with this new version. Such as chips produced by Qualcomm. You can, let's see, support for Intel's newest and most powerful Xeon processors. That's a little bit more. If you're just running a standard server, it's probably going to have Xeon processors in it. We've got support for the latest AMD EPYC and Ryzen processors as well. So Ryzen, especially if you're building actual desktop workstations to run Linux on, you can put Ryzen in them and then run SUSE Linux Enterprise Server on them. And then both Power and Z, those are two different processor architectures, which I actually got a little confused reading this, or not really confused, but it occurred to me that IBM does both the Power and Z processor architectures. Now I actually looked it up, and Power is more of an open spec that IBM just contributes to, whereas Z is IBM's sole property. But yeah, both Power and Z systems, those are both processor options that come from IBM for more enterprise level users running data centers and whatnot. Let's see. So like I said, the new Service Pack 3 includes support for fast local non-volatile memory express, or more commonly referred to as NVMe SSDs. My laptop has an NVMe SSD.
Mine as well, yeah.
Yeah. So there's also enhanced non-volatile dual inline memory module, so NVDIMM block device support. Never heard of that one before, but it sounds like another fast flash storage architecture. There is optimization for SAP applications, optimized for performance with those, and SAP, those are like sales tracking and inventory management, supply chain management, that kind of thing. Expand security capabilities with updated support for trusted platform module, and they expanded key server support for SAP systems with the Key Management Interoperability Protocol, KMIP standard. This release also fully supports MariaDB, so in the past you kind of had to use MySQL if you were running SUSE Linux Enterprise. Of course, if you're running SUSE Linux Enterprise, I would imagine you're okay with running MySQL and having a support contract with Oracle, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can run MariaDB on it now if you want to. And then you're now also going to be able to use SLES as a desktop with the new SUSE Linux Enterprise Workstation extension. So just like Red Hat has those, what did Red Hat call them, that were like pre-configured things you could install, and it just like sets it up as a web server or sets it up as a desktop? Do you remember when we talked about those a couple weeks back?
No, I can't remember what they're called, darn.
But we talked
But I
about
know
a
what you're
thing
saying,
where
yeah.
Red Hat was making it easy to just set up a computer or a server as one specific thing by basically installing a task to it. That sounds sort of like what the extension thing is for SUSE Linux Enterprise. So yeah, there's a new extension for workstations if you do want to use this on desktops. And then that does require, though, a SUSE Linux Enterprise desktop subscription, which is probably going to be pretty expensive. And yeah, now it's interesting, they say that the SUSE Linux Enterprise desktop now uses GNOME 3.20 for its desktop interface. That's really interesting because SUSE has always been a KDE company. They have always preferred, Red Hat's always pushed GNOME, but SUSE has always pushed KDE. And even though OpenSUSE, you can get it with either KDE or GNOME pre-installed, they've always been more on the KDE side. They've been known for their KDE implementation, their Plasma implementation. So yeah, very interesting that their server or their enterprise distro is now going to be using GNOME by default, not KDE anymore. Although they do offer a classic mode for people who still want to use KDE. So yeah,
Yeah,
aside
that's
from
definitely an interesting sign for it.
yeah,
Because they could be dropping support for KDE down the road, although it doesn't look like they mentioned
yeah,
anything about that.
I
But
doubt they're going that far, but it is an interesting thing they're doing. But yeah, aside from that, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 12 has a 13-year release life cycle. It was released in October 2014. It will continue to be released for a lot more years because they had 10 years of general support and 3 of extended support from the release in 2014. And the current Service Pack 3 will be maintained and supported until 6 months after the release of Service Pack 4. So just keep your stuff up to date, which I assume you'll be able to do if you're running SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. Any other thoughts about that?
No, you pretty much addressed everything, I think.
All right, and
Oh,
then
other than what's interesting, it mentioned MariaDB database and Docker containers, because that's kind of what I'm doing with Minecraft Media.
right,
Because
yeah,
that's like the exact setup I had, so I thought that was kind of cool.
yeah.
But
I
I
forgot
use
to highlight
Ubuntu
Docker, but
already, so
yeah, you do get Docker support as well. Good spotting that. And I also wanted to mention another thing SUSE is doing for their enterprise customers. There's a new thing called the SUSE Package Hub. And it's a place, it's basically a repository where SUSE Linux enterprise users can go to find a collection of popular open source packages pre-built for SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. Now, it's interesting because the packages from the SUSE Package Hub are not officially supported by SUSE, but they are officially approved for use, and you can use the packages without breaking your SUSE Linux Enterprise support contract. So
wow, that's interesting.
kind of
Yeah.
sends some mixed signals to me if they're saying we're not supporting this software, but you can install it. Like, how do they test it to make sure? They say that you can install it without worrying about breaking your support contract, but I guess there's no guarantees it won't break your system if they're not supporting it.
But then why would?
then-
But then wouldn't they be obligated to still give you support?
Right, they'll
if you
support it
accidentally break your
by
system with it.
removing it or fixing it, yeah, I guess. And then they've also got a blurb asking people to submit their packages to the SUSE Package Hub if you want to get access to the plethora of people using SUSE Linux Enterprise. So that's interesting. It just seems like they're pushing, like community repositories are a thing. There are a lot, Ubuntu's got PPAs, Arch has a community repository as well as the AUR, and OpenSUSE has the OpenSUSE build service. But yeah, it's trying to make a community repository for enterprise users only. I'm wondering how much of the community would push to that, or how much of anyone would push to that at all. But yeah,
if they're already trying to use enterprise, they probably want stuff that's officially supported, and they don't have to
right.
go to
And if
another
they're
place
going
to look for. Yeah.
and if something's not already in this repository and you're an enterprise and you're going to spend money getting it to work on SUSE, you're not going to put it up for free on this thing after you just spent money. You're just going to keep it for yourself, probably. Thinking as an enterprise who would use SUSE. So yeah, they're also doing that. Keep an eye on that. Next up, the FlatHub website now lets you install applications rather than just providing minimalistic information about Flatpak. So Richard, we've talked about Flatpak and Snaps before. They are universal installers for Linux. And have you ever used Flatpak?
No, not currently, actually.
All right, so Flatpak has a website called FlatHub, and it is sort of they call it a quasi-official, OMG Ubuntu calls it a quasi-official app store for apps packaged and distributed using Flatpak. So basically anyone can package their application up as a Flatpak, but not everyone has their Flatpaks listed on FlatHub. So keep that in mind when you're browsing FlatHub. But basically there's this website called FlatHub. Until now, it's just sort of given you basic instructions on installing Flatpak packages, but now the FlatHub website actually has a list of the programs in the FlatHub repository, and it's also got one-click installing for all of the apps listed in there. So that's definitely going to be a huge plus for Flatpak, because right now Ubuntu had something similar with the UApp Explorer website. Have you ever installed anything on that?
No, but I did see you linked me to one thing from it that I forgot to install because I changed OSs during that week. But
yeah.
I would have if I remembered at the time.
So yeah, this is definitely a good thing for Flatpak. I'm still a little unclear on the whole repository thing with both Flatpaks and Snaps because I thought we were trying to get rid of repositories with these universal installers. Like their whole argument was that repositories weren't good enough. And now it's like, well, we still have repositories. It's just you're trying to get everyone to use one repository that you're maintaining, and you get approval over whether things are in here or not. So obviously there's going to be people making their own repositories that you're not approving.
Yeah, it just seems like then they're like, we don't like repositories we don't have control over.
Yeah, which we've already discussed. That's exactly what snaps are after, is control. For developers, they want control. Flatpak wants the control over this stuff as well. But yeah, basically you can go to FlatHub, get that stuff. So for users on Fedora, Arch, Mageia, and OpenSUSE, yeah, one-click installation, it works already. Now, if you're on Ubuntu hates Flatpak, of course, and then OMG Ubuntu says, but not really. I would argue, yes, really, they do really hate Flatpak. Because guess what, Richard? Ubuntu doesn't ship with Flatpak installed. It does not include the Flatpak plugin that allows one-click install. And the Ubuntu Software Center only promotes Snap apps. It does not even support regular apps, let alone Flatpaks. Only promotes Snap apps and like the recommended applications on Ubuntu. And then, by the way, as a side note, this is OMG Ubuntu. This is a publication dedicated to Ubuntu, and they don't even know if they're supposed to call it Snappy or Snaps. They say, I never know which it is. This is a writer who he spends every day, his job is to write articles about Ubuntu, and he doesn't even know if it's called Snappy or Snaps. And if one of the Ubuntu devs read this article, they would probably call this author an idiot, because that's what they've done every time I've seen other people call it the wrong thing online before. Is they say, oh, your entire argument's invalid, you use the wrong name. Clearly, though, if the people who are paid to just write about you don't even know which one to call it, then
you have not done a good job of making it clear what your actual name is.
With your branding, yes.
Yeah.
So you are going to, if you want to use Flatpak in Ubuntu, you can't even just install it from the repos, because Ubuntu does not keep Flatpak up to date in its repos. So you have to add the Flatpak PPA, which, once again, that's defeating the whole purpose of we're getting rid of PPAs with these universal installers, because now I need a PPA to install the universal installer. Then even once you do that, the one-click install is broken on Ubuntu. So
wow,
you still have to use the command line, even if you do install Flatpak. So, but if you're not on Ubuntu, then Flatpak is a great option, and you can go to FlatHub. Let's see here. If you go to flatpak.org, it's even got a link to, not really. See, if you go to flatpak.org, they've got a list of apps. And like Skype is one of these apps that you can get one-click install from flatpak.org. Now if we go to flathub.org, then Skype is not in the list of their applications.
Wow.
So it's like,
I mean, aren't those both officially run by Flatpak too?
Yeah, FlatHub is run by the same people who run Flatpak, as far as I know.
And yet they don't even have the same applications in both.
No, they don't. So that's still very disorganized and interesting. So keep an eye on that if you're interested in one-click installers, or just, switch to Arch or a distribution that's got good repositories. You don't have to worry about it. Our next story, Richard, is one you're talking about. It is OpenShot 2.4 has been released with a focus on stability. What's going on here?
All right. So basically, the previous couple releases had a focus on new features, and they're saying this one is a focus on stability.
They're saying,
basically,
yeah.
They wanted to include. They also included a few new features, though. They're not like huge features.
Yeah.
Basically,
Minor
improved the undo and the redo history, and they added a new freeze and zoom menu.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, he Thomas, the person who I guess is behind this, is the main developer originally, and encourages people who've had issues in the past with the previous like 2.x builds to give this new version a try. I did try to give this new version a try, but unfortunately, it's not actually updated to install on Ubuntu yet, even on their official PPA, which kind of is annoying.
Yeah. So it's not updated on Arch's repos either. So their official PPA does not have it on Ubuntu yet.
Yeah, even though this article says it does, which apparently it wasn't. Because I'm running 1704 and it wasn't there. But other than that, the article does address the stuff, but without actually getting to test it myself. I don't want to be like, I'm sure on whether they improve the stability or not. I mean, even the article encourages basically.
I was just going to say that. I like how the article says, quote, "Why, dear readers, that's for you to find out. Go put the latest release to the test," and then gives instructions that don't work on installing the new version.
Yeah.
Great job, OMG Ubuntu.
Like, isn't that actually your responsibility
as
the
the
person writing
journalist.
the
Now,
article?
we are also semi-quasi-journalists here, Richard, and we can test this out and let our viewers know how it's working, because not only is it available as a PPA, it is also available as an app image. That's the third universal format, and the one that me and Richard both prefer, I think. So I downloaded the app image right before the show, and since I'm sharing my screen, why don't I go ahead. All right, so here on stream, I've got a folder called OpenShot, and I'll just go ahead and here, open up a terminal. All we have to do, let's go, I forgot how to make an app image executable, so I'll go to appimage.org, and on the front page, here are the instructions. So chmod a+x.
It's got to allow it to have execute permissions.
Right, chmod x openshot.appimage, and then /openshot_appimage. All right, so appimage is asking us if we want to install a desktop file. We'll go ahead and click no, but we are opening up the app image, and on my other screen here, I just had OpenShot launch. So that's how easy it is to use an app image. None of that, you know, you have to install Flatpak, or you have to, from the PPA, you have to go install Ubuntu for Snappy. No, app image, you can just run it on any distribution. And if we go to about OpenShot, this is version 2.4.0. So if I open up OpenShot from my system menu, then it's still going to say, here we've got OpenShot about, it still says 2.3.4, but the app image that we just launched is definitely 2.4.0. Yeah, now I'm not sure, how should I actually test? I don't know how much testing we can do on air though. Let's see, was there anything specific you noticed that was very buggy before? Or it just didn't start for you?
Well, when I tried to import, I don't even know what happened. When I tried to import a file and I clicked a folder, and then it lagged out. So I'm not sure if I accidentally clicked something that wasn't a valid file type.
Okay.
Or what, because it just all of a sudden completely froze, and then I couldn't even minimize or close it anymore. There was nothing displaying.
Yeah.
Other apps would display in front of it or behind it. So the whole thing just broke at that point. So I guess that would be the quickest way to test it.
Just importing some footage.
Yeah.
Let's
or try importing something that isn't a video.
Oh, that isn't a video.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've got.
Is it a video or image? Because it see if to make sure that doesn't crash it.
Okay, so for video, I did want to do just a video to see if it worked, and it did import. Okay, that's lag's not well. Yeah, it's still kind of screwy where when clicking works and when it doesn't, but that works. And then so let's try importing a text file. How about that?
Yeah.
So here's an ODT file. So this is a LibreOffice document. Tried importing it. It says that is not a valid video, audio, or image file.
All right, that's better than I got. Because
now if I open up,
managed to import some clips. That's farther than I got in 2.3.4.
I wonder if I open up 2.3.4 and try and do that same thing, will it crash it? Aha! It did. All right, that's cool. Oh, no, it didn't. It did the same thing. It just gave me... I don't know what your problem was, because I just got a dialog box that said it wasn't a supported file, even in the old version. All right, well, we don't know what the difference actually is, guys, but we did get the new version of OpenShot running. So you have that much. If you're into really slow but easy-to-use video editors, go and use OpenShot. If you're looking for something more professional, Kdenlive is still my professional recommendation. But yeah, anything else? Did you want to say anything else about OpenShot 2.4, Richard?
Not really anything else. I know that OpenShot does support transparent FLV files, so and Kdenlive didn't when I tried it.
And we were just talking
the
about
one benefit for it.
Right, we were just talking about that before the show, and I told Richard that the best thing to do would be to convert that transparent FLV to
image sequence,
PNG image sequence.
A PNG sequence, yeah.
Any video editor would support that, but yeah. I did want to mention, the article mentions, in 2013, the developer of OpenShot ran a successful crowdfunding campaign for OpenShot, raising $45,000. Now, that wasn't to fund OpenShot 1.0. That was to fund OpenShot 2.0. And then the developer disappeared for several years before finally coming back with the new version.
Interesting. Opening a text file and mine still crashes it in 2.3.4.
Oh, really? Huh.
So it might be a difference between Ubuntu being the back end for me and you using Arch.
I don't know. Same version. I don't know why that would happen, but yep, that is OpenShot 2.4. That is out if you're using that. And the next thing we're talking about is over on the KDE side. So last week, it was just last week, we were talking about GNOME redoing its system settings, right?
Yeah.
So KDE, not far behind at all. They are also redoing their system settings. So system settings is a good expression of the power of KDE Plasma. And this is the blog of a designer for KDE. So they are a KDE contributor, but they're not a developer. They do design work, and the developers implement what they design. So the designer says, I have decided to keep working with system settings. They've done a little bit of work on it in the past. They've decided to keep working on it to help the modules arrive at a good place in the near future. This person says that they suggested they become the lead designer for this project. Now, the designer does ask for ideas and thoughts on the new design, but they say they don't want ideas and thoughts that would drastically change the direction they're taking. They only want ideas and thoughts that match what they currently are doing, which I think is kind of a bad thing for a designer to say, because that kind of means they're not open to feedback. That means I'm open to feedback as long as you like what I'm doing. You know, that's
or
only
as long as it's like a minor nitpick and
right.
not a okay.
Yeah,
this
that's
is
like
bad. You should start from scratch.
That's like when somebody says, I only want constructive criticism. I don't want regular criticism, only constructive, because that's completely subjective. What is constructive? And you know, they say this is somewhat rough, but here is something I can show you. So this is a mock-up of the new KDE system settings. Now, it's kind of blurry because this is a low resolution image, but Richard. Now let's see, I think I've got a higher resolution. Somebody linked a higher resolution image down in the comments. Here we go. So here's a higher resolution screenshot. Have you looked at these screenshots? I don't like them.
I'm looking at them now. Yeah.
I really don't like them. And this is a KDE user speaking. This is a Plasma user speaking. These screenshots, this system settings is way oversimplified. So basically what it looks like here.
I mean, let me pull up the current one.
We've got, well, yeah, if you look at the current one's not great. It gets the job done, though. It houses all of the options, and the current one has a search box, so I can search, like, if I want to change my desktop background.
You're right, that doesn't actually have a search box.
Desktop. Yeah, the new one doesn't.
Screenshots.
Now,
I don't like that idea.
My problem with this, it's got, like, look and feel, and it's just got 3 pictures. Desktop theme, it's got pictures. Cursor theme, it has pictures. There's no text anywhere on this other than like the categories. Like every single selectable option is a picture, it looks like. And that I don't, you know, I'm not a preschooler. I need to be able to read what I'm looking at, not just look at these tiny little screenshots of an entire screen for every single possible option on my system, which there are hundreds of options on a KDE system.
Like share that with someone, like if someone's asking what you're using under the setting, how would you verbalize that?
Yeah,
without a name?
I'm using the one with like the black background, and then it's got the green box in the middle. Yeah. Now I mean,
like the best way would be maybe like second row, second column or something.
Well, if you've got different amounts of like themes installed, then it might not be the same numbers though. So on the very left-hand side, we've got 5 different overall categories, I guess, and then we've got a middle sidebar that's got different places you can click on, but then all of those places, it looks like, are already visible in the right-hand column, like look and feel, desktop theme, cursor theme, splash screen. You can click the button on the left side, but if clicking the button on the left side just scrolls you to that spot in the right side.
A point on a web page.
Yeah,
like
it's
how they do it in the modern
website. It's not bringing you to an actual different page. It's just scrolling you down one long page, which seems less organized to me, not more organized. But yeah, they say that work on labels is something that they do need to work on, which I'm glad they have acknowledged they need to work on labels. They also want to develop a tone and angle for descriptions. You know, I would say having descriptions of any kind would still be better than the current mock-up with no descriptions whatsoever. But, you know, if you want to worry about the tone of your descriptions, you can make your style guide. They say they want to work on removing tabs altogether in favor of a one-page interface. And that it's just the worst idea ever, because how many settings does KDE have? It's got like literally hundreds of settings, and they say we don't want you to have to click more than 3 times before getting to the desired content, they call it. But here's the thing, would I rather click 4 times and get to what I'm looking for in 10 seconds, or would I rather spend 2 minutes scrolling through hundreds of options, because the KDE designer thought that they needed to remove all buttons and just have a one-page interface.
Or the fact that they removed the search.
You know, clicking is not a problem. The problem is how much time you spend on it. So I hope they do some testing on how quickly users who aren't familiar with this new system, who aren't the ones designing it, can actually find what they're looking for.
Also, I assume the screenshots they're posting are only from Breeze, because I don't see any ones with the Breeze Dark, which is the look and feel I use.
Yeah, well, these screenshots,
otherwise it looks very out of place.
These screenshots that they posted, yeah. Well, these aren't even. This isn't a running program. This was something this person did in GIMP. Like they photoshopped this together.
Think of how it would look in dark, I guess.
I guess not. I mean, that's something that I imagine if they build it in Qt, it's gonna basically take care of itself in terms of the colors of the text in the background and everything. But yeah,
so I guess we're just going by layout really in looking at this, not the colors necessarily,
right, yeah. Which. And it's like a left to right layout too. It's just weird. But yeah, they say they're working on getting people to the next KDE Sprint, which is at Ronda. And Ronda was a very big event for Kdenlive last year. So, basically KDE has these developer sprints. They had Academy a little while ago we talked about. Ronda is the next one coming up. And lots of big things happen with KDE apps at these developer events. So yeah, looking forward to what comes out of Ronda for every application. Now, after some feedback in the comments, Richard, the author of this article actually posted an update at the bottom of their post. And they say, I am not a developer, I am a visual designer. The mockup is missing a few things such as a title bar, search fields, labels, and buttons. Yes, the mockup is missing buttons. Okay. Clearly buttons are a minor thing in a settings center. Who needs the apply button? It's just a settings. Who needs a title bar?
Well, since
I don't know what this person was.
Hopefully, that means they're not actually ditching the search, and that it just meant he didn't include it in his mockup.
No, I don't know what this person was thinking when they made this mockup with no title bar, no buttons, no labels at all. But they have at least acknowledged that people want those things, so hopefully they will add those in later. So, I'm using KDE, and it's gonna take a lot to get me off of KDE. So I'll be seeing where this goes in the future. I'll let you guys know when this is actually in development and usable. The next story, though, is another desktop thing, although it's more of a non-desktop specific thing. This is PulseAudio 11.0 has been released. What's new, Richard?
All right, so this is kind of something that hits directly home with me because it affected me. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not being released soon, but basically it's the latest stable release as they talk about it, and they're talking about a bunch of new features and capabilities being added, as well as some bug fixes.
Yep, so and PulseAudio is the sound server for Linux, so if you're listening to sound, you're probably using PulseAudio or using a microphone, things like that.
Yeah. So they're adding support for newer AirPlay hardware. I do have like an iPhone, but I don't use many other Apple products, so I wouldn't really that wouldn't affect me much to know exactly what that's included.
Yeah.
And if what hardware it wasn't supporting prior to it. But I guess they're supporting the latest Apple TV models, and it'll be possible to stream music to devices and receivers over this just from your settings inside of PulseAudio, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
They're also, one thing they talked about is basically all speakers. It will streams to all speakers in a surround sound system except for the subwoofer, but you can disable that.
Right, the disabling is the new feature.
In the config files. So
yeah, well, just to touch on the surround sound system. So like some people have 20 speakers plugged into their computer, but if you're listening to a stereo audio file with 2 tracks, by default, PulseAudio is going to play that stereo file through all 20 speakers and split it 10 and 10, or however you have it set up. But some people, if it's only got 2 tracks, they only want to use 2 speakers. So that's what disabling upmixing would do.
Okay.
And what's the next
thing? The thing that really affected me is USB and Bluetooth devices are now preferred over internal sound cards by default. And basically, this is one of the main problems I kept having last week. And luckily, it seems to have not had this week because I actually remember the setting. But basically, my headset is using a USB connection through Bluetooth between the receiver and like my wireless headset on. And so by default, it would actually it would set its sound output and recording to automatically go through the sound card in my motherboard. Okay. And so I always remember having to change that. And this is nice because by default you don't even have to ever change it, and it'll just prefer it automatically. Yeah. Because my mic, the AT2020, is also a USB microphone as well, so I was having issues even with that too.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely a good change. They have some of the other changes they included. They mentioned that they have a headset role now for these Bluetooth. So I guess any Bluetooth headset has kind of a role set there that would hopefully, I guess, apply those settings to it.
Yeah.
And then there's some other stuff they mentioned. I don't know what MTU configuration is in Bluetooth, but they improved that.
Probably
They
shouldn't.
added support for GNU Herd.
Yeah, I
which
I
is
highlighted
interesting.
that. That was the only thing in this list I highlighted. You know, I don't know what improved Bluetooth MTU configuration is either. And that's why I wouldn't have even said it out loud if I was running through the story. But, you know, the one
Yeah.
thing in this list that I highlighted was support for GNU Herd. So if you're running the GNU kernel with your GNU tools, and like we attempted to some weeks back on the show, you can now use PulseAudio, which is probably going to give like a 500% quality increase to the sound situation on Herd. If they did not have PulseAudio before and they do now, they're probably going to be pretty happy about that. Anyone?
I mean, I'm actually surprised that wasn't included in its own like paragraph, but I guess this is OMG Ubuntu, so they're focusing more on Ubuntu and Linux.
Yeah.
Because that feels like on the list that shouldn't have been an afterthought. That would be a more significant thing.
You'd
At
think,
least certainly for anyone
but
who's heard.
yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, for Ubuntu, which this also affects me,
Yeah.
it's not going to be released in 17.10,
Right.
and it's
So-
not easy to update other than by using the third-party package or to build it from source.
Yeah.
Neither of which is all that good of an idea because it's such a core part of your OS that if you screw that up, your sound management, your sound server is going to not really work well.
Right.
But I assume it'll be out in 1804 in
Probably.
Ubuntu.
But to be
By then it
clear,
should be
yeah.
integrated.
So when you say 17.10, you know, not everyone knows this. So Ubuntu 17.10 is the version of Ubuntu that will be coming out next month. So it has not come out yet.
Yeah.
PulseAudio 11.0 was released this week. 17.10 of Ubuntu comes out in a month. They have a month to include this, but they're not planning to
And yet
include it.
they're not.
They're shipping 10.0, which is now outdated for PulseAudio. So you're going to have to wait like 7 months to get the new PulseAudio if you're an Ubuntu user. Now, I'm on Arch. I'm going to open up a terminal right here, and they give you this command, PulseAudio -- version at the bottom of this OMG Ubuntu article. I'm going to paste that into my terminal right here. I've already got 11.0. This came out this week. I've already got it. Richard has to wait 7 months because I'm using Arch and he's using Ubuntu. That's one of the reasons I use Arch. Just wanted to point out.
Released over this.
Yeah. They point out the negative in the OMG Ubuntu article, but of course the article doesn't say, if you want it now, switch to a rolling release distribution. No. They never say that. They just say, oh, and we can't get it for 7 months. Sorry, nothing we can do about it. There is something you can do about it as an end user, but that's up to each user to decide for themselves if that's important to them.
And I am actually awful tempted to go that route on my desktop. I could not go that route on my laptop because the installer on the live USB would not work.
I think you can get it
CBIOS.
to work, but I think you can get it
and
to
I
work
guess I
by
could
playing
use
with
more
it. You might not be able to get it to work easily, the installer to boot up, but I'll bet there's a way. But yeah, that's another discussion. So yeah, PulseAudio 11.0 is out. Let's see. The next thing we're talking about this is another one you're talking about, Richard. What is Linux Mint doing with window progress? So this was part of their recent monthly news for August.
Okay, so I'm actually going to talk about two kind of things in the article they mentioned because there were two kind of big things. So first, they improved their backup tool.
Yeah.
And it actually looked pretty cool if you use Mint because basically they simplified it a lot. They wanted to limit its scope so that it would do less, but what it did, it would really do well, which I feel like is kind of one of the core principles behind it. And so basically you don't need to even use a password to run it anymore because it no longer runs as root. And it backs up your data only from your home folder and basically your software selection as well. So it allows like incredibly easy upgrading from one version of like Mint to the other if you have to do a complete like reinstall.
If you have to do a complete reinstall. Now, like Linux Mint does have the ability to do in-place upgrades as well. So probably don't have to do a complete reinstall.
Yeah. But even if you happen to, you could probably use it to move to even another like OS as long as you could get the backup tool on there.
I'm assuming most of this, the good stuff with the backup tool though is going to be automation though, because like I can just copy my home folder. So what's the automation capability of this?
Well, it's nice that it automatically can do it into tar archive because that's somewhat painful to do.
Yeah.
Like if you want to get everything inside your home folder.
Oh. Yeah, it's difficult to do if you don't know.
Yeah, and basically one of the main options though, or one of the main things is also you can exclude files and directories and they will remember it for future backups.
Okay, that's
And
nice.
that's pretty cool. So by default though, all hidden directories and files are excluded, but you can actually put them back in if you want to. If there's certain things like your maybe Steam settings you'd want to be constantly backed up.
Mhm.
And they also changed it so the backup tool now lists only your programs in the software manager and not every package on your entire system, which I
Hmm.
guess definitely makes it more user friendly because that's kind of the idea it seems like they're going with.
Yeah. I'm
And
assuming that you're gonna get some stuff lost in there though. If like a package doesn't have a program associated with it, I don't know how it decides what is and is not a program, an application.
yeah, well, I guess if it's inside the software manager, their software manager.
Yeah,
So
it's designed to
if
work
it's
with their
installed through
stuff, I
that.
guess.
Yeah. One of the other interesting things they're doing is they did some changes with window progress
Mhm.
and basically like they show an example of Windows 7 in here, which shows how the long Windows has had that since it's like 2009.
Yeah.
But the idea of window progress, in case you don't know what it is that when an application is performing a task that would have, say, a dialog box up, it'll actually display down in the taskbar
And the progress
inside
bar.
of its like view.
I
Yeah.
think the progress
So
bar is
you
more
can
important than the
see
dialog
that
box.
percentage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because often you'll probably like put something in front of the dialog box and you'll
Right.
go to your web browser or just do some other task
Like
in
if
the
you're
background.
copying a big file or if you're running an update or something or rendering a video.
Yeah. So they included this in libxapp as the C library that they made,
Yeah.
and it provides dynamic bindings to basically a ton of languages. But they show an example of Python with it. They also show an example of a screenshot of like that says my window, seeing how that would look in action,
Yeah.
just to illustrate the point
So
more.
if you have a program, let's say that it's completing a long task like rendering a video and it's 50% done, 50% of the little box in the taskbar will be filled up with red, it looks like in this example.
Yeah, and that's just handy, especially for a long task. Obviously, a file copy often is pretty quick unless you're copying like 20 gigabytes, but for
Yeah.
like a
Well,
video render, that
that's
would be
what
really helpful.
Right, yeah. I copy
Although
large files a lot.
yeah, I was
Probably do too.
unarchiving 15 gigabytes when I was moving
Yeah.
when I moved to the newest version for my old like version of Linux. And basically, this is coming in Linux Mint 18.3, and it is implemented in Cinnamon, but they did not support. They're considering adding support for it in Mate, Kaja, and Synaptic.
Right, which
they
Kaja and
haven't yet.
Synaptic are applications that come with made for me.
Yeah.
Now,
And basically, they did include it in pretty much almost all their major ones, like for file operations with Nemo, the backup tool, the
well,
software
yeah,
manager.
when you say
the
all their
driver
major
manager.
ones, so yeah, their file manager, yeah, it's the stuff that
Their
comes with Linux
applications,
Mint.
yeah.
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 Which we were talking about
The
this
stuff that's
before the
built into
show.
their distribution.
Right, we were talking about this before the show. One of the sentences that I don't really like in this blog post is, quote, "We decided to make this possible in Linux by implementing it in libxapp." Talking about the window progress feature. We decided to make this possible in Linux for the first time ever.
Except it's already in other stuff.
Yeah, this is already a feature in KDE Plasma. When I'm rendering a video in Kdenlive, I get feedback in the taskbar on the Kdenlive window that shows how far it is done rendering. When I am copying large files, which I do often with video, I get feedback in the Dolphin item in the taskbar showing how far it's gone, just like Windows 7 has. So yeah, they're not the first people to do this on Linux, and they're saying that they are, but you know,
It
I
also
guess, just
shows
not
it
paying
in the
attention.
status and notifications thing in KDE as well, under
Right.
the progress. If you have like
Yeah.
4 things going, which
Yeah.
a couple times when I was like unzipping a bunch of files at once, I had like 4 or 5 things going and could track them all inside there.
But it does
Just pin
literally
it.
have it in the window as well, or there are at least options for
Yeah.
it because I have that on my system. So
'Cause that's when they put in Linux, it's a little
Right.
different than when they say in Cinnamon.
And Richard had a little bit of confusion about the libxapp thing, because when you say, oh, it's libxapp, you know, we use X on Linux. Every desktop environment runs on the X window server, the X display server. So that must be for all desktops, right? No, libxapp is only for Linux Mint. Now, they made libxapp. You can go back and read about when they started libxapp. They said, oh, now everybody can use Linux Mint's great built-in tools. software. Everybody can use Nemo for their file manager. Everyone can use whatever our they made like a custom text editor that's basically just a gedit clone. They like basically cloned a bunch of Mate software, which would be old GNOME software. They cloned it, called it X, and then said now it's generic and standard. But nobody really uses it except for Cinnamon. So if you look at the list of things that this window progress works in, basically it's just going to be Cinnamon tools, Linux Mint tools that you're going to be using with Cinnamon. Still nice that they've done it. For sure, if you're a Linux Mint user, you're going to love this. If you're not a Linux Mint
user... And if you're a developer, you probably might want to just add support to your application.
Well, that's the thing, though.
Running it on Cinnamon.
That's the thing. I don't think a lot of developers are going to go out of their way to add... Because Linux Mint, even though it's still... I think Linux Mint is a very good and popular distro. To be clear, I actually really like Linux Mint more than a lot of people do. But there's a lot of contempt for Linux Mint out in the Linux community for various reasons. And then Linux Mint is also losing a lot of market. First of all, just to Ubuntu. Also, they've lost a lot of market to Elementary OS and Solaris. Just some other user-friendly, beginner-friendly things that have come out, distros that have come out since Linux Mint. It's not really the go-to anymore. So I don't know how many developers are actually going to go out of their way to add in the code for this when it's only going to work in Linux Mint, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, the reason this was kind of significant to me is because the lab computers that we have at my college are all running Linux Mint. So
are they really?
I don't personally run Linux Mint.
That's weird. Yeah. That's really weird. Yeah. Wow. Huh. What version are they running?
18.2.
Okay, and it's the Cinnamon version?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's very interesting. I would not have thought that a college would be using Linux Mint at all, but there you go. It just goes to show you, anyone who says that Linux Mint is not popular, the school Richard goes to is using it, so at least some people know about it. All right, so there's that.
Basically, it's because it's kind of user-friendly, I guess, at a certain point.
Yeah.
But as you were saying, there's others that are competing with that, so I'm not sure the exact reasoning on choosing it over others. I wasn't really obviously involved in that decision, but
yeah, I don't know. The next story, you were also going to talk about this, though, Manjaro phasing out 32-bit support.
Yes. Let me open that article. I think I actually have it up. Oh, I do. Okay. So basically, they talk about it in the beginning. They say, due to the decreasing popularity of it among developers in the community, we've decided to phase out support for i686 or 32-bit architecture.
Yeah.
And they're saying that basically then, starting in version 17.03, that will be the last one that allows you to install 32-bit Manjaro Linux. And basically, the main way they're doing it is they're saying that packages no longer need to support i686 at all to to stay in their package, stay in the repositories, I guess.
Yeah.
But so that's effectively making it unsupported. But as you were pointing out, there's the real reasoning is probably because Arch that they're based off of isn't supporting it anymore. So it would be very hard for them to force people to continue supporting 32-bit.
It's really interesting. First of all, I already knew from reading about this previously that Arch was going to be discontinuing their 32-bit support in November. It was gonna that's it. It's turned off in November, and it's really convenient that Manjaro says September and October will be our deprecation period, starting from November, which happens to be when Arch is dropping 32-bit support. That is when we will be dropping 32-bit support as well. Here's what's really interesting, though, Richard. So we're gonna go. I've got actually the Arch Linux. This was a announcement put out on January 25th of this year on the Arch Linux website. Now, Richard, read me the first sentence of the Manjaro announcement.
Due to decreasing popularity among
read it word for word.
i6 developers in the community, we have decided to phase out support for this architecture.
All right, here's the first sentence of Arch Linux. Due to the decreasing popularity of i686 among the developers and the community, we have decided to phase out the support of this architecture. All right, and go ahead and read the next sentence, Richard, in the Manjaro one.
This decision means that the version 17.03 ISO will be the last one that allows 32-bit installation of Manjaro Linux.
The decision means that February ISO will be the last that allows to install 32-bit Arch Linux. What's the next sentence?
September and October will be our deprecation period, during which i686 will still be receiving upgraded packages.
The next 9 months are deprecation period, during which i686 will still be receiving upgraded packages. And then the next sentence?
Starting from November 2017, packaging will no longer require that from maintainers, effectively making i686 unsupported.
Starting from November 2017, packaging and repository tools will no longer require that from maintainers, effectively making i686 unsupported. And that's, let's see. That's the end of this one. It says, kind regards from the Manjaro project leader. They copied and pasted that.
It was a copy paste.
They copied
because there's a period on unsupported and then kind regards with no capital K.
The part they copied from Arch Linux has good grammar, and then the part that they typed has bad grammar. But yeah, they copied and pasted the release the announcement that Arch put out in January. They're just now.
No shame.
Manjaro was like, oh, Arch is discontinuing 32-bit? No problem, we're not Arch. 6 months later, oh, hey, by the way, completely unrelated to what they said 6 months ago, but we're going to be discontinuing this at the same time as they are. We're just giving you less notice about it. It's,
completely unrelated, almost entirely word
it
for
would
word.
have been more genuine, more true to their users, I feel like, if Manjaro had made the announcement back when Arch made the announcement. Like, why? I actually considered switching from Arch to Manjaro on one of my 32-bit computers because I was like, oh, Manjaro hasn't said they're going to discontinue 32-bit, so maybe they're going to keep it going. It's like if you already knew that Arch was doing this and you knew you would follow suit, why would not? This Arch announced this on January 25th. January 26th, the next day, I would have expected Manjaro to come out and say, hey, Arch announced this. Obviously, we're based on Arch, so just so our users know, you've got 9 months to get off of 32-bit. But instead, Manjaro's just pretending for 7 months that they're not going to discontinue 32-bit, and now their users only have 2 months to get off of this, whereas Arch gave their users 9 months. So it's just ridiculous. Manjaro, they hide that they're based on Arch, whereas Antergos is very open about the fact that they're based on Arch. But yeah, Arch does say that there's the multi-lib repository will not be affected. So like if you're using 32-bit drivers and things, then those should still be okay on Arch. But yeah, that's happening. Anything else you wanted to say about that, Richard? Because you were taking the lead on that story.
Not a whole lot. I mean, I don't actually have any 32-bit computers that I've installed anything on in the last 5 or 6 years. So I don't know how many people it's affected. You said you did have a 32-bit computer.
I've got a few 32-bit computers. A couple of them are old Dell Dimensions that I have used in the past running Linux. One of them used to be the Nerd on the Street web server a long time ago, but that's long. We don't use that for a web server anymore. I've used them for Minecraft servers. We don't do that anymore. One that I actually do still use is a MacBook. It's one of those old, it's a black MacBook. And it's old because they haven't made black MacBooks for a while now. It's actually got a 32-bit processor in it.
I've never heard of a black MacBook.
Yeah, they made them a while ago. It was before Unibody and everything, but yeah, I've got one of those that I got fairly recently. And even though my main computer is a laptop, it's a System 76. It's the workstation. So I don't just take it everywhere because I don't want it getting beat up, for one, because it's several $1,000s, and two, it's pretty heavy. It doesn't have great battery life. So my laptop, I do take it from place to place, but I'm not using it on the go. Whereas sometimes if I know I'm going to be in a car with somebody else that I'm driving with for a while, or if I'm like, oh, I want to throw a laptop in my backpack so I can write some scripts when I'm at school, between classes, I'll just throw this MacBook in my bag. And I've got Fedora 32-bit on it right now because it was the one of the only distros that still has 32-bit support left. I'm not even sure. I think Ubuntu I don't know if Ubuntu has 32-bit or not still. Debian definitely still does. But yeah,
Pretty sure Ubuntu does.
I
but
wanted
I'll have to double check on that.
I wanted to put Arch on that that MacBook, but I knew that they were going to be phasing out 32-bit support, so I'm like, well, guess I shouldn't do that. Another one that I use 32-bit distros on sometimes is my 2006 Mac Pro. Now, it's actually got 64-bit processors, but the bootloader is 32-bit. So the easiest thing to do with that is to just install a 32-bit operating system. Installing a 64-bit with a 32-bit EFI bootloader is a pain in the butt, but it's what I'm going to have to do in the future if I ever want to install one of these 64-bit only operating systems. So that's where I use 32-bit.
Okay.
All right, and
that was just interesting. I haven't used it in a while, but that was cool to realize that there are clearly still use cases and there's still people using it.
Yeah, there are some. All right, and our very last story this week is remote desktop capabilities making a comeback in GNOME on Wayland. So we've talked about how Wayland, because of security, it breaks a lot of the screen casting and screen sharing features in that we had in X that we were used to. You know, you can share your entire screen, you can remote desktop in, but that kind of thing, Wayland doesn't just let any application see the entire screen because it is a security risk. You know, you get one program on your computer that you know is doing things that you don't know that it's doing, and this is why open source is important, because you can have a proprietary program. You know, what if Google Chrome started taking a screenshot every hour? And I actually recall something like this happening at some point in the past with Chromium, and then people found it in the source code and called them out on it and they removed it. But it was actually taking screenshots and not sending them anywhere, but just storing them. Like every couple hours it would take a screenshot and just save it, not do anything with it. And that was creepy that they were doing that. And that can obviously be used for nefarious purposes. So Wayland doesn't
then another program that just knows about it could look those up, and maybe
Right.
there could be a password or a username or something on that.
Or
on
it
screen
could be
at that
sending
point.
them to third parties, and now people know what you're doing on your computer. So Wayland doesn't just let any application access your screen, but sometimes you do want to share your screen or you want to remote desktop in. So GNOME used to have the remote desktop server called Vino. However, it was left behind when GNOME transitioned their desktop from the X compositor to Wayland. And so GNOME has been left without a working VNC or even a remote desktop protocol server for almost a full year. However, a developer called Jonas Dahl from Red Hat, they're a Red Hat employee, and they have been busy adding the new dbus APIs to libmutter, which is Mutter is a GNOME window manager and Wayland compositor. So libmutter is GNOME's implementation of Wayland. So the two new APIs that Jonas Adel has added are Remote Desktop and Screencast, and you can use those to create full screen streams or streams for individual windows. Now, only the former has been implemented so far, full screen streams, which that kind of seems like of course, if you have the option to get the entire screen or only a section of it, most people are just gonna, for the ease of it, say, oh, get the entire screen. Even though that's bad for security. I feel like we're building in these security things, and then we're just gonna have programs just bypass it immediately, and it's going to be not like there's not gonna be a point to any of Wayland's security because we're just gonna use user land applications to get around every bit of security that Wayland built in. But I can see like OBS using individual windows in the future because OBS has an option to only track one window. So it'd be cool if once OBS gets ported to Wayland, if they can use this to do that. Now, of course, that would only be on GNOME right now because KDE is not using Mutter, but that's another issue.
One of the user land programs that utilize these APIs have to ask permission or something? I would hope, right?
I don't know. I don't think they mentioned it here, but the new APIs to finally allow services such as RDP and VNC servers. I mean, this is talking about remote desktop. To be fair, this isn't talking about Screencast. Sounds like something that might be for screen sharing, but remote desktop, obviously there is authentication
already. So
inherently
not anyone can just remote desktop in without you giving them permission.
Right. If you're setting up an RDP or a VNC server, you're going to want to set up some authentication in that server. But yeah, he created a program called GNOME Remote Desktop, which is a new user-level systemd service daemon built on top of the new Remote Desktop API, plus VNC support from libVNC server. And that new service can be used to connect up a remote VNC client to your local screens session. So that GNOME Remote Desktop program is a drop-in replacement for the old Vino server. So basically, when GNOME ported to Wayland, they lost this ability, and they have now gained it back, is what this story is saying. They are back to where they were before. So yeah.
It does just leave me wondering about the org.gnome.mutter.screencast API, though, and if that's secure.
Yeah.
Because that's a system I'd like, is then it just kind of like, you know how Windows UAC will ask you to give something permission. It would ask you to give permission to view the desktop. That way you know, okay, Skype is sharing my screen now or whatever.
No, hang on though. In Windows, when you open up Skype and try and share your screen, do you actually get a UAC prompt?
No. But the whole Skype application is a UAC prompt. Do you have to run it as administrator or something? That's what UAC is for, right? Yeah, I'm not saying Windows does that, but I'm saying that kind of idea of a prompt.
No, but yeah,
to make sure you know.
But to be clear, like Windows does not have that level of security.
Yeah.
So we're not behind in that sense. It's just something to think about. I don't know if it does or not, but see how it's implemented in the future. But yeah, that's our last story for this week. Man, that was a long episode, Richard. We've been going for an hour and a half. How about that? So yeah, if you enjoyed the show, head on over to nerdonthestreet.com for more videos. And remember, go to nerdclub.knots.co if you want to help us make more of these. It is $3 per month to join the Nerd on the Street Nerd Club. And then you can access the full uncut stream recordings from streams like this one. You can chat with us on our members-only forums, although we do have public forums over at nerdonthestreet.com as well. And by the way, we are also trying to save up for a capture card for our upcoming Extra Life stream this year, and joining the Nerd Club would really help us afford that capture card. So nerdclub.knots.co, or just go to nerdonthestreet.com, click on the Nerd Club link in the top bar. But yeah, for now, that's all of the Linux news this week, and I hope that is enough information for everyone. Richard, if people really liked your take on things, they want to see more of you throughout the week, where can they go?
You can follow me on Twitter at glorif22, GLORIF22, or you can check out my website, richardsprojects.net.
All right, and you can find me on Twitter at JacobGKAU, or of course just at nerdonthestreet.com. But yeah, for now, that's your Linux news. Keep using Linux, everyone, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.